Deity Vargas Furniture. Hello and welcome to another episode of Conversations with the Druid, episode 5. I hope yins are doing well today. My question for you, to start off, is there a color that you imagine with yourself, that you see yourself, that represents you? How are you feeling today? Are you sad, tired, angry? What are you feeling? We're going to skip the guided meditation, Three Cauldrons meditation this time, and just get to the heart of the matter. In case someone wondering why I make some of my conversations with druids for kids, it's because kids are an important part of the Tua, and also because every single decision we make as their parents and guardians will impact them and their children going into 7 generations, and we should plan accordingly and vote accordingly. And therefore I try to incorporate the conversation that will allow them and their families to discuss the content matter. Now, the important first order of business I would like to deal with is, if you're driving and you see a person on a bike, it's kind of like someone riding a horse or driving a horse and buggy. Do not honk at them. They will more than likely look over their shoulder and run the risk of possibly driving into traffic and getting into an accident and getting killed. Share the roads. This has happened to me on a couple of occasions and I do not appreciate it. You people need to learn how to drive properly. And if you're driving so fast enough that you can't get into an opposing lane of traffic to bypass a bicyclist without honking at them, because we are not allowed on the sidewalks riding our bikes. So we have to be on the roads, and if you're unwilling to share the roads, you probably shouldn't be driving, regardless of where you have to go. Just simple courtesy, people. Now, one of the things I would like to discuss after that public safety announcement is dealt with is a couple of things. So, as you probably know, I am a pathwalker with the Celtic Druid Temple, and I am a first level initiate into Ada, as well as second in command. And in case of those who don't know what Ada is, it's the Ancient Order of Druids in America, and I just recently joined them. Now, I hope to encompass a couple of things with this to improve and round out my education as a druid. As I save up the money, I plan on taking the Celtic Druid Temple Sliandry course. And then their Almnua teacher's course, so that I can teach Almnua both as within the framework of the Tribe of the Oak as well as Ada, as I progress through the ranks with Ada. But just to be a well-rounded individual. In terms of the Tribe of the Oak, I am second in command. The Ardri Olav, Archdruid, for those who want to speak English, is Jazz Smudgeson. And we're looking on changing the reading list to incorporate things like gender studies, environmental studies, social and environmental justice, and stuff like that. In addition to reading on the mythologies of Ireland and Wales, Brittany and the like, in the Celtic 6 Celtic nations. their mythology and such, as well as principles on the brain laws and the archaeology and studies of Ireland in terms of their relation to the Druidic studies in Celtic Reconstructionism. But the reason why we're also adding the current things is because while not wanting to be a carbon copy of groups like Ada and the Celtic Druid Temple, we believe that the study should be updated to allow for the challenges and circumstances in which our Twa find themselves between climate change, and the other issues facing life in America and in Europe. And this is also why you have me harping on politics in some of my videos, is because you cannot get two people together without having some form of political discussion, and an avoidance of politics is an avoidance of interaction with people. It's just one of those things that comes with it, and essentially you have to arbitrate not necessarily who gets what rights, but arbitrate compromises so that both people can live in some degree of peace and tranquility and safety. And like I said, children are what make the Tua grow, and they're not stupid, and as long as one engages with them in an age-appropriate level, they should be incorporated and involved with the decision-making process insofar as they're able to do so and based on their level of comprehension. You hear me speaking Irish a lot, and I am also learning Welsh in the process, although that's much weaker than my Irish is. And other languages that I speak are Japanese, Spanish, German, just because that's important to have a well-rounded education, to be a well-rounded individual, and to be compassionate unto others. For as they say, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And even though we're flawed individuals, if you don't know better, learn better. Once you've learned better, do better, as John Sullivan says in the Irish Pagan School. Once that's accomplished, the next important thing is to then go out and read whatever you can, whenever you can. Practice your cursive and writing skills. Write letters. If people are accused of spending too much time on their cell phones, take time to write a letter to a friend. Even if they only respond with a phone call, that letter will make a huge amount of difference in their life. Or if you have the money, buy a postcard and just send them a hello, how are you? Just simple courtesy. I am not always perfect in doing that myself, I admit. Mostly because it's hard to do that when you're low on money and everything is expensive. But I try to be as courteous as I can, despite that. And when I have money, I give it to the people who need it most. As well as setting stuff aside for my continuing education as a druid and as a student of life. Um, so there are things to take into consideration. And it's been said that people have been beating the drum that this is the most important election of our lives quite frequently every time there is an election, especially for president. But with the way certain parties have devolved over the decades, there's only one party left that's actually for the people, as flawed as they may be in actual practice. And those are unfortunately the Democrats. I would like to see more third party candidates actually fielding candidates at the local level and state level so that we can build up a trustworthy base, because I'm a Sinn Féin supporter and Green Party supporter in supporting independent who caucuses with the Democrats, because they're closer in line with my values than, say, the Republicans. And not all Republicans are created equal. You have the Trumpicans, and then you have old school Republicans. And essentially, you can tell the difference by how they value people and interact with people. But a party that advocates for authoritarianism and fascism is not a party that we want here in the United States, especially in light of the fight in World War II to stamp out fascism in Europe and prevent it from spreading across the world. In World War II. At one point, Russia could have been an ally of ours, but with the way Putin has gone, it is no longer, is once again back in being an adversarial position as opposed to a friendship or allied position. And I don't see much changing with that regard in the foreseeable future, at least as long as Putin's alive. And so, I wholeheartedly support democratic values. Low D Democrat, not capital D Democrat, like the political party. And also with Benjamin Netanyahu and his far-right conservative government in Israel, it's gone beyond the point where, I mean, at first you could argue that they were justified in self-defense, but 40,000 people later, that line of being able to defend oneself against a lesser armed enemy and at the risk of using our money and military supplies to expand the war throughout the Middle East, especially attacking Iran, Lebanon, Syria, as justification of attacking Hamas, despite there being an ongoing state of war with Lebanon and Jordan. Lebanon, Jordan, and Iran have been remarkably restrained, for which I am grateful. But one needs to be, in an interest of free speech, one needs to be able to criticize Netanyahu's government and the policies that they choose to make in prosecuting the so-called war um, is not the same as being anti-Semitic, and one's desire to conflate the two is being disingenuous at best, if not malignant at worst. Um, the people of Palestine deserve to have their right of free determination to determine how they're going to live their lives, same as the people of Israel, to live in peace and security. If that requires a two-state solution, so be it. But the two sides have to learn to live together. And it's no longer at a point where you say, oh, well, they've just been enemies since biblical times. That was then, this is now, and they are not the same people as they were then. And any society that has to walk around with guns strapped to its backs in order to protect themselves is not a free society. And yes, that includes our own. I do not personally have guns. I was 302, and therefore I'm not allowed to own, or carry guns. I don't know if the statute of limitations is passed and if that has changed somewhat, but I don't care to find out. And so I require on the institutions of governance, to protect me insofar as they are able. And so, yes, it's just a matter of, do you feel that the institutions are protecting you, or don't they? And if you feel the need to buy a gun, do you store it in a proper location? Because you might consider yourself a safe person to have a gun, but your partner may or may not be. And just having a gun in your presence increases the likelihood of a gun-related accident or death by about, I'll say, 25%. So what is a manageable or mitigatable risk that's acceptable to you? We also need to start caring for our environment. We cannot have companies despoiling it, because the earth is a finite resource. And if we pollute the air, we pollute the atmosphere with CO2 and cause Triassic or Jurassic levels of carbon dioxide emissions that increase the temperature on a daily of the global temperatures on a daily basis, then we're jeopardizing our health between the methane and the carbon dioxide. And the sooner we admit that and start working as a collective whole to deal with it, the better off we're going to be in the long run. I do not pretend to know all the answers, but I have some suggestions, and I will put forth the problems and try to give solutions as best I can, although I don't know if they'll work or if everyone listening will agree with them. But what I have to say is important, so I hope you consider it for what it's worth. Finally, look at life as a garden. You can either let it grow wild, develop what some people would refer to as weeds, entropy, where different plants start to enter it based on the situation, and you start to see the development of a forest develop through plants moving to areas where they feel they're better suited or just need more space. Or you can have it so cultivated, like an English manicured estate garden, where everything is in its place, but there's no room for biodiversity or plant and animal management relevant to the garden as a whole. That involves insects, birds, and other creatures that would utilize the plants in the garden for food, nesting, and similar types uses, which always must be considered. And life is pretty much like a garden. You need an equal balance of both wilderness and not civilization is the word I'm looking for. I don't know can't quite put my finger on what the right word would be, but it's kind of in between these so-called English formal garden or the Japanese formal garden and a wild space set aside for wildflowers, plants, pollinators, and stuff like that, and just left to go wild. Finally, in my final note in closing, I would like to say that I am looking forward to my continued growth as a druid. If you're wondering why I'm making political statements on my channel, which involves druid, my course is a druid, is because druids are political animals. We were and are growing to become, we were involved with moral philosophy in ancient times, and we're starting to grow into that again. Although some groups are less enthralled with the subject of moral philosophy than others, but it's an important distinction to make, and moral philosophy is important. And yes, you can be a moral philosopher and not a Christian or Muslim or Jew, just to make a generic statement about the whole thing. But I will leave you with this thought. Grow in peace, love thy neighbor, and love thyself in equal measure. Be safe.